Team of the fantasy baseball season, and here's a few hitters I look to buy and trade for this week. The first guy, George Springer of the Toronto Blue Jays. So Springer, we know he's one of the best power hitters in the league when everything is clicking, but now he's been struggling over the last month of the season. On the season, 15 home runs, 38 RBIs, 8 stolen bases, 47 runs scored, 248 average, and a 331 on base. So right there, those are good numbers on the surface, but the last month he's really hit the wall. Is George Springer. 4 home runs, 8 RBIs, 13 runs scored, a 198 average, and a 305 on base. So right here, he's not getting on base. He's not hitting the baseball, is George Springer. And his numbers are definitely taking a hit. The only thing that he's kept going over the last few weeks here is the power. But besides that, he hasn't been a factor at all for fantasy owners. July 1st versus Tampa, 1 for 3 with a run and 2 RBIs. July 2nd, versus Tampa 0 for 3. July 3rd versus Tampa 1 for 4 with a run. July 4th at Oakland 0 for 4. July 5th at Oakland 0 for 4. July 6th at Oakland 0 for 2. So right now he's in a bad slump as George Springer. 0 for his last 10 and 1 for his last 17. So he's not really hitting the baseball at all. But once this guy gets going and gets hot, he could carry a fantasy team for a month here as George Springer. So right now, I think you just got to give up a decent pitcher or a decent bat for him, because the last month, like I mentioned, he's hitting under the Mendoza line at 200. But once this guy gets hot and going, it's going to be tough to stop him, and it's going to be tough to try to trade for him. So right now, if you're a Springer owner, you just got to be patient and get through the slump that he's going through, and he'll pay dividends. And if you're an owner, obviously, who wants to get Springer on your team, this would be the perfect time to pounce and get him, because this guy definitely has 35, 40 home run power, even though this season, who knows if he's going to reach that mark, but he's still going to reach 30, I believe, here is George Springer, and I definitely want him on my roster when he gets going for sure and gets on a hot streak. The next guy, Xander Bogaerts of the Boston Red Sox. So Bogaerts in a contract season here for Boston, and it's been a hit-or-miss type of year for Bogaerts, believe it or not. On the season, 7 home runs, 34 RBIs, 3 stolen bases, 48 runs scored, a 314 average, and a 387 on base. So right here, Bogaerts, his numbers are good, but it's just really batting average. His RBIs aren't much with 34. Home runs, 7 isn't much to go to town about. And over the last 2 weeks here, he's really struggled. 1 homer, 3 RBIs, 6 runs scored, a 167 average, and a 311 on base. So right here, Bogaerts, I think he's going to turn things around and start to get things going. We know shortstop's a very weak position in fantasy baseball, and if you could get a guy who's had many great seasons like Bogaerts on your roster, this will be the time to do it, because I think his power is going to start picking up here. Last year, he finished with 23 homers, and he definitely could get to that mark here with the All-Star break coming up next week here. And then after that, we'll see what he could do with 2.5 months left of the season. But right now, while he's not really hitting the baseball, putting up the numbers many Bogaerts owners expected coming into the season, I think you could get him on a discount. The last few games here for Bogaerts, June 29th at the Jays, 1 for 5 with a run. July 1st at the Cubs, 1 for 4. July 2nd at the Cubs, 0 for 3. July 3rd at the Cubs, 0 for 3. July 5th versus Tampa, 1 for 3 with a homer, 3 RBIs. And July 6th versus Tampa, 0 for 4. So right here, another guy slumping a little bit here is Bogaerts. 1 for his last 13 at the plate here. And right now, he's still playing, no doubt about it. He's still going to have to pay a decent price. But right now, I would get him on my roster, because once he gets going, this guy really could hit the baseball. And his numbers are still good from a batting average aspect, hitting 314 while he's been slumping over the last few weeks. So he definitely could get back going, is Xander Bogaerts. And I look to go out there and buy him, because the only thing he's lacking is the power and some RBIs a little, even though we know he bats 4th in the lineup, and the RBI should be more up for him on this Red Sox roster. The next guy I'd look to buy this week here, Riley Green of the Detroit Tigers. So Green, a lot of hype after getting called up a few weeks ago. And so far, he's off to a pretty slow start. 1 home run, 8 RBIs, 12 runs scored, a stolen base, 269 average, and a 372 on base percentage. And over the last 2 weeks, he's hitting only 235 here, is Riley Green. So a lot of hype. 5-2 player type stuff here we heard about Riley Green. And he was tearing it up in the minor leagues. And he's batting first for this Detroit Tiger team. So he's the table setter. And he's the main man over there, it seems like, in Detroit. With. Want to build the team around here is Riley Green. And the last couple games, he's gotten things going. But surprising to me, he's only owned at 53% of fantasy leagues. So if he's out there on your waiver wire, you go out there and get him available in 47% of leagues. If not, I would try to make a deal for him because right now I think he's starting to get comfortable and he's starting to show what a lot of people have been talking about, what Riley Green could do for the Tigers. So the last few games, July 1st versus the Royals, 1-for-4. July 2nd versus Kansas City, 2-for-4 with a homer and RBI 3-run scored. July 3rd versus Kansas City, 1-for-5. July 4th in a doubleheader versus the Guardians, 1-for-9 with a run and 2 RBIs. July 5th versus the Guardians, 2-for-5 with a run and 3 ribs. And July 6th versus the Guardians, 1-for-5. So right here, he's in a division in the Central where nothing isn't great at all here. Besides maybe the Chicago White Sox and the Twins have a few good starters where he could take advantage, where he could get on base. And this guy, like I mentioned, a lot of high hopes from a lot of people here. And it's still early in his career, no doubt about it, where he might come slow out of the gates before he gets things going in only 67 at-bats. But this is a guy I think can help fantasy teams in many aspects. He could hit for power. He could drive in some runs. He could steal bases. And so far, we haven't seen the home run power or the base stealing. But once he's more comfortable and getting into the groove of things here, I think Riley Green could be a big X factor for fantasy owners. And right now, while his numbers ain't all that great in the first few weeks up in the majors, I would try to buy him before he gets going and gets comfortable and can help your fantasy team where you don't got to pay a premium price to get him. The next guy's another rookie who has a lot of hype since he's been up. Cruz of the Pittsburgh Pirates. Cruz, he came up the first night in the major leagues, and he was dazzling with a crazy 98-mile-per-hour throw to first base from shortstop, and then hitting a triple as well in his debut. On the season, 3 home runs, 13 RBIs, 8 runs scored, a stolen base, a 200 average, and a 222 on base. So he's really struggling, is only Neil Cruz with the batting average, and already 20 strikeouts in 60 at-bats, which is no good as well here. And over the last 2 weeks, he's only hitting 196. So right here, this guy's a 5-tool type of player as well, except maybe the stolen bases. But defensively, he's great. Sweet swing at the plate is O'Neal Cruz. And he's another guy that tore up the minor leagues before coming up to the majors this season. So the last few games here for him, June 30th versus the Brewers, 1-for-4, home and 2 RBIs. July 1st versus the Brewers, 1-for-4 with a RBI. July 2nd versus the Brewers, 1-for-4 with a homer and RBI. July 3rd versus Milwaukee, 0-for-4. July 5th versus the Yankees, 0-for-3 with a run and a rib. And July 6th versus the Yankees, 1-for-3. So right here, the Pirates, we know they're one of the worst teams in the league. They get trounced almost nightly, losing last night's ball game 16-0, even though we know the Yankees are the best team in Major League Baseball. But right here, O'Neal Cruz, he's actually been dropped in a few percent of fantasy leagues, owned in 74%. But available in 26% of fantasy leagues. So if he's a guy on your waiver wire, even in 18 leagues or deeper, you definitely should go out there and pick him up because this guy, like I mentioned, a lot of hype around him, a 5-tool type of player, except the stolen base aspect of things. But we've seen a lot of rookies so far come up with a lot of hype this year and not get the job done on the major league level. But O'Neal Cruz, supposedly he's once in a generational type of player. And if you could get him on your roster this year, I think he could show something. And he still has 13 RBIs in 60 at-bats on the season. The average is low. I know the strikeouts are high. But he's a player, once he gets more comfortable and get things going, he can help fantasy owners. And obviously, he qualifies and plays at a weak shortstop position in fantasy. So right now, if you can make a trade for Cruz or even pick him up on your waiver wire, this would be the time to do it because once he really gets things going here, this is a guy it's going to be hard to trade for, and a guy fantasy owners would be dumb to trade off their roster here if he's hitting on all levels and all cylinders, especially in Dynasty and Keeper League. So right now would be the time to get Cruz before it's too late, and he breaks out in the 5th and final hit I look to buy and trade for is Luis Robert of the Chicago White Sox. So Robert here, he's been a good player so far in his early career in the major leagues. On the season, 9 home runs, 42 RBIs, 40 runs scored, 11 stolen bases, 289 average, and a 321 on base. But over the last few weeks here, he's had trouble getting on base with walks, and his batting average is down 2 homers, 6 RBIs, 8 runs scored, only a 240 average, and a 269 on base, so a bad batting average to on base ratio here. And even in the regular season, the same thing here. Robert, he's not patient at the plate. He's a free swinger. He's an early count swinger here, which is surprising for a guy third in the lineup here for the Chicago White Sox, but he's still having a good season. But right now, well, he struggled over the last couple weeks here, even though I know he hit a homer in yesterday's ball game, and he's starting to break out of the slump a little bit here is Robert. He's another guy that can help fantasy owners in a lot of categories, and he's a 5-tool type of player as well, who was one of the top prospects last season coming up in the major leagues. So the last few games here for Robert: June 29th at the Angels, 1-for-4 with a run. July 1st at the Giants, 0-for-4. July 2nd at the Giants, 0-for-4. July 3rd at the Giants, 2-for-6, 2 runs, 2 RBIs. July 4th versus the Twins, 0-for-4. July 5th versus the Twins, 2-for-3 with a run. And July 6th versus the Twins, 2-for-4, a homer, 2 RBIs, 2 runs scored. So right here, a lot of young guys I'm telling fantasy owners to go out there and buy and trade for this week. Because once these guys get going, they could be top players this season here when it's all said and done in fantasy. Because a lot of these guys have a lot of talent, a lot of good ball players, and the guys that can do a lot of things. Hit for power, drive and run, score runs, and steal bases with a good average as well. So far, these guys haven't really lived up to the hype, especially over the last few weeks. But once Cruz, once Riley Green, and once Robert really get things going, these guys could be great fantasy players and guys who could be big X factors in helping you win a championship, or at least getting deep into the playoffs or making the playoffs here. So this would be the time to buy those guys, especially those 3 guys I've just mentioned. So that's a few hitters I look to buy and trade for Week 13 of the fantasy baseball season.